Mrs. Danielle DeVita back with another video. I overheard someone say that marriage is overrated. A lot of women say, I like the strong silent type. Well, a lot of men like the feminine silent type. And for sure, it's going down. So a lot of times people are not getting the value. When to speak and when to be quiet is one of the most powerful. She's going to be aggressive, thinking that. And as someone who's been married for 12 years, she's driven, not lazy. And this will make yourself and get on the right path. That understand that you might be doing a disservice to your daughter. If you don't help her understand vetting and proper decision making, now she's going to be a basket case later. If you don't help her understand emotional intelligence, she's going to hold on to a lot of emotional baggage. If you don't. Thank you for watching another quick video with Mrs. Danielle DeVita. I am Danielle. So today I want to talk a little bit about intuition. I did a YouTube shorts about intuition, saying that you should not follow your heart, you should not follow your mind, but you should follow your intuition. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that. And bonus, I have a story time for you. So it may get a little bit deep. I may, depending on how I'm feeling when I get to that part, then I'll go ahead and discuss it, because it is something serious. It is something deep, but I think sometimes people may not, it may be too much for some people. It may go over some people's heads. So let's go ahead and get started with the intuition part or not following your heart. Our heart is full of emotions. It's full of hurt, pain, trauma, especially with us as women. We harbor a lot of things in our heart. So you do not want to listen to your heart, because your emotions can pull you and lead you astray, because you're going to be basically chasing a feeling, how you feel at that moment, chasing an emotion. You're going to be emotionally charged, and that's not what you want. Although we hear the term that, or we hear the phrase, men are more logical than women, we do need to use our logic, and women, we do have logic. So we do need to use proper reasoning, be a prudent person, and take the time to look at, if I do this, this will happen. If this occurs, and this, if I do A, and then B, happens, therefore C. So we need to be able to look in our head, what are all of these things that are going to happen? And you can't do that with your heart, because they're going to be full of your emotions, your trauma, and insecurities. Same thing with your mind. They're full of things that may not be what you should be listening to. You may not be fully transformed in your mind yet. So your mindset may be all over the place. Who you're listening to, the music you're listening to, who you listen to on social media, what shows, what movies you watch, things that you entertain, the people you're entertaining. You want to be careful, because these things, these outside influences that come in, can influence you to do things that's not appropriate. You hear, when you're little, your parents say, are you going to do what everyone else does? So people sometimes are influenced by peer pressure and what society says, and it's not always appropriate, or it's not always going to be aligned with your values and your faith. It may not be aligned with your ethical compass. It may not be aligned with your standards. So understand this. If you're not transformed, if you're not renewed in your mind, if your mindset is like what you hear the term people say of the modern woman, the woman who may think about, women's empowerment to the point that they want to push away from men. Maybe you're listening to people that are saying push away from Black men. Maybe you're listening to people that says, push against, traditionalism, and you are traditional. Maybe you're hearing people say, let's not submit anymore to men. Let's not allow men to be the leaders, but we're the leaders. So you may hear a lot of these things, but the goal is to make sure that you're listening to things that's going to make you a better person, that you're inviting people around you that are positive, upbeat, and uplifting. I'm not saying be naive. I want you to be realistic. So it's very important that you're transformed in your mind. You are someone who is bettering themselves, improving themselves, and you can't do that if your heart is harboring a lot of emotions that you did not get healing from, or your mind is filled with things that are not positive, and that's going to help you be a better person for the future. Not for just for your man, but for you to be a better person in general. Okay? So, with that being said, I believe that you should follow your intuition. Your intuition does have a logical component. It does takes using your brain because it has a neurological process involved in that. Your intuition. Um, so, let me give you an example. If I were to play tense music right now, you're going to assume that there's something suspenseful about to happen. If I play thriller music, you're going to expect something horrific to happen, like a scary movie. If I play something upbeat and cheerful now, you're going to expect, something of that. Depending on the music, you've watched cartoons and you hear all these different music backgrounds, so you know if someone is about to do something goofy or crazy, something is about to be a surprise, a thriller. So your intuition takes in all these things that you listen to, and it realizes through when you're unconscious, when you're asleep, through and things are maybe you have the TV on and music through your subconscious, or things that happened while you were awake. Situations that have happened in your life. It could be a traumatic event, it could be a exciting event. It's a memory. It takes in all of these things. And you get senses when you feel these things. If you right now smell some home cooked food, it may take you back to a time when your parents cooked your favorite meal. It may take you back to a certain time period where if you smelt something, if you were in the military and this particular smell brings you back to a time where you smelt this particular gas. If you were smelled someone's cologne and you had a traumatic event, and this takes you back to a time where this person smells like the man that did something to you. So your intuition takes in all your senses, all of your memories, and it brings that to recall as you go through phases in your life. So you may get to a point where you see a red flag and you say, "Wow, I feel funny, I feel weird," because your mind can sense this has happened before. It's like something's wrong. You should follow it. And a lot of times, if you are someone who is faith based, you may be sparked by the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit gives you guidance to these very things, these spirits. Test the spirit by the spirit. Sometimes you can feel people's energy, their aura. Even if you're not faith-based, even if you're not Christian, have you ever stepped in a room with someone who just feels creepy? You standing next to them, it feels like something's wrong. Something's not there. Their spirit is strong. That aura about them. Then you're around someone who is just so energetic and they give you life. You just have to be around them. They're the life of the party. So this is what I mean. So whether you are faith-based or not, you can still feel people's energy. And a lot of times you hear when people feel that energy coming, they match it. I'm not telling you to match that energy. I'm telling you to be cognizant of it and then decide what to do when once you've recognized this feeling, and make appropriate actions to it. Just know that intuition is the same. It's just as important as when you actually see a deal breaker or a standard that is not being met. You want to address it. And my thing is, if someone gives you an indirect answer, or you feel more confused or something, that's also a red flag. You want concise, direct answers to your question. When you get to a feeling of intuition, you must act. You cannot leave it alone. You cannot ignore it. You cannot poof it away, because it's going to come back. And what's going to happen is you're going to be blindsided when it comes back. You're going to be hit up from the side because you weren't prepared. You weren't ready to fight if you have to. You weren't ready to leave if you needed to. You weren't prepared to make the necessary actions. You must follow your intuition. So with that being said, let me go into story time about my intuition. And I'm actually going to say the Holy Spirit, because I am faith-based and I've always had vision. So for some of you, this may go over your head. Even if you're not a Christian, you could still listen to this. But, it may be a little eerie. And a lot of times people may not either believe me, or they may think that this is just some made up stuff or whatever have you. But I truly believe in visions. And visions are something that could be sleeping while you're awake. It's almost like a dream like, but it feels real. So when I was in college, I dated this guy, and we dated very briefly. So I was going to this church, and I did not reach out to him. I did not like him or anything like that. So I wasn't flirting with him. I was just going to church, doing my thing, part of the dance team and all of those things. And then I would go home. Well, he actually approached me, reached out to me, and that should have been not necessarily a red flag, but it should have been. He was older than me. So I was maybe 17, just turned 18. So I did go to college a little bit early. So, but I was technically a sophomore going in, but it was actually my first year in college. So I'm still technically a baby. And I meet this guy, and he approaches me, he talks to me, he befriends me. And I'm like, okay, cool. He does seem like this God-fearing man. He's all into the church, and he was about 25. So again, I said I was probably just turned 18 a few months ago or something like that, and he was 25. And yes, he was still in college. And once we started talking, it was casual, nothing like that. And FYI, I was a virgin. So that happened, and then, we were, I think month 2, we were still talking. It wasn't really serious. I wouldn't say we were exclusive. I wasn't talking to anyone else, but I don't know what he was doing. But it was really like we were just talking. There was no seriousness in dating and things like that. And then it got to the point where he asked, are you a virgin, and things like that. And please watch my video about things that you should not tell a man. And I do think that he kind of preyed on some of those things, preyed on my innocence, so to speak. So one day, and he's like musically inclined. He sang, played the piano, and did things like that. And one day I met him in the piano room, and I actually got there before him. He said, go in to the room, the music room, and then I'll meet you there later. And it was towards the late evening, and he was doing some late night uh, composing music or something like that. So while I sat there waiting on him, I was just kind of sitting in the on the piano bench, and I was just upside down, just hanging, doing whatever. And he comes into the room. But when he comes into the room, I kid you not, it seemed like the world stopped. Like time literally, if like in those Western movies where it seems like everything slows down, everything gets quiet, and the only thing you see is like the hay that goes across the ground. That's what, like, this was literally like that situation. You could literally hear the silence. I don't know how else to explain it. You could literally hear the silence. It was almost like I was in a black hole, like the time stopped and it literally slowed down. And when he came into the room, his body was the same, whatever the suit it is that he had on, and he was a sharp dresser, so he had the suit on, but his face was literally a demonic face. It was literally a demon. And it felt like 10 seconds of looking at him, but I'm pretty sure it was a split second. So when I saw him, I fell out the chair. I'm like, oh my God. And I didn't say it, but I literally felt like someone in a movie where they couldn't say or do anything. They were just in shock. And I was in shock. And then he said, are you okay? And then when I sat up forward, because again, like I said, I was like upside down, like when you hold your head back. And when he came in, I could literally see him upside down. But when I, got my head up forward, he was normal. I didn't know what to do at that moment. For you, if you're listening to this story, you're probably thinking one or two things. Either you, one, you're thinking I'm lying, or two, you're thinking, why didn't you run? Because that's the logical thing to do. Leave. Why would you still talk or date someone who is like the face of a demon? Whether I believed it or not, why would you stay with that person? Well, I did, and I thought, I'm crazy. But I knew I'd always had these kind of visions. My mom said that I was, or a lot of people around me said I was someone who is have a discerning spirit. So I'm able to test the spirit to see someone's true intentions, and a lot of times I'm able to feel their presence. But this was the first time I was actually able to see the spirit on them, and it was spooky. Okay, and I don't know how to explain it. It still gives me the heebie jeebies or whatever you say, like just to see that demonic face was unrealistic to me, but it was very real, and it was in real time, and I was up and awake. I was not daydreaming. So stayed with them. Fast forward, a month goes by, because again, all this happened over the course of 3 months. Maybe month two is when I saw this. Then I introduced him to my parents. It was close to Christmas time. I introduced him. My parents liked him. He put on a good front. But again, we weren't spending all of our time together. It was literally casual. We weren't full on dating. Now, mind you, I need to kind of rewind a little bit. Prior to me experiencing this vision, I was told by someone who wasn't particularly, we weren't friends. I wouldn't say we were enemies. We were just, she didn't really care for me, right? But for her, she was like, "Hey, Danielle, what are you doing? What, of all people, this guy?" And so I'm like, I shrugged it off. I'm like, hmm. So I took it slow with him. I did what she said in the back of my head. I listened, and I didn't see any red flags. But again, we weren't spending all of our time together because I had a lot of other things that I did. I was on the track team. I did after school activities. So all of my time wasn't with him. It was literally only a portion of the day with him every other day, and in that church. And we weren't physical at this point. So that was the first time that someone said something, and then the vision came. So now looking back, hindsight 2020, I got my first warning. The second one was like, you need to let this guy go. Fast forward to all of these things. I was he revisited this situation about me being a virgin and all of those things, and he was like, well, I want to get physical with you, in so many words. I'm trying not to say so much on YouTube, but he's saying all of those things. I'm like, no, I don't think I'm ready. And peer pressure kicks in, and this is where I get into this whole SVU kind of stuff. This is the point where he says, I say, fine, whatever, okay. And then he proceeds to do whatever, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be pressured anymore. I don't. So at this point, he took it as, you already gave me the okay, so I'm gonna do whatever I want to do, and he did. So this is what you would call date. You know what? So that occurred. Now the SVU part is, why did I still stay with him? I felt ashamed. I felt all of these things, but yet still I stayed with him. And I'm thinking, well, maybe this, maybe I wouldn't, I would say he was a manipulator, like making me feel like, well, you wanted this, you said this, we're dating, what's the problem? So it wasn't like some random guy off the street. It was someone I was talking to. So I kind of stayed a little bit. And when I say I stayed probably a week or two. And then after that, I'm like, no, I don't like this. Because after that, he continued to ask, and it just got to the point where I just felt like I was being pressured continually at this point. And I felt kind of defiled, so to speak. So I ended up telling my parents all that happened, and they were like, you know what? Yeah, break it off with this guy, no more communication. And so we went back to school because it was over Christmas break. I told my, roommates, my friends about it, and they were like, really? And so we called him, and he's just this manipulator. And he made it, I swear, on the phone call, when we tried to get him on the call to admit to what he did, to do something about it. And you would think like this is something I asked for. And then he actually apologized and things like that. So it got further where I reached out to the person at church and I'm like, you know what, this has to come to an end because something's not right. This person, someone already told me something's wrong with this guy and they knew him. I have this vision and then this happens and then he becomes manipulated. And I'm not going to go into all the manipulative things that he did and said, but it's so bad. I forgot the guy's name. I can see his face, but I really wanted to block a portion of that part out of my life that I swear I can't remember his name. I want to say it's Kevin. I don't know. So I don't even want to go there. But he we go to the church. I tell this bishop because usually at this particular church I went to, I forgot the kind of church it is, but they believe maybe like a prophetess type of church where they believe in spirits and stuff. And I'm like, well, surely if I have this gift and I can see that, maybe if I tell the bishop, he's gonna be able to see whatever this is. I tell the bishop, and and I go with a friend, and I'm ready to bust out crying. So I say, you know what? Let me think of happy things so I can stay, straight, like without emotion, and get this out. And I bust out laughing, trying to prevent myself from busting out crying. And he's probably like, whatever, this girl is lying. Well, so he says, okay, well, we'll look into it. I knew he wasn't going to look into it. So I said, you know what? This is all my fault. I'm just going to forget about it. And, he's not going to believe me. I bust out laughing. Well, it wasn't a hysterical laugh, but it was like a nervous, weird laugh. The thing that you try to make yourself think of something funny in your head to keep from exploding. And yeah, so that resulted from that. And so 2 days later, one of the deaconess, if that's what you call it, of the church was like, hey, I know you shared your story with the bishop. And I don't know if the bishop, instead of him coming, he asked her, because I don't remember telling her the problem. I just told her I wasn't going to the church. I wasn't going to be able to dance anymore and things like that. But she comes to me 2 days later and she says, I know that you left the church because of so-and-so. And I just wanted to let you know that we got him. It's okay. And I'm like, what? Well, come to find out, someone else befriended him, and they befriended him. Not, I don't think date-wise, but there was an older person at church who had two girls, a 9-year-old and 7-year-old. I don't know the age. One was 9, but it was two girls. And when he came over to the house, he, you know what? So, yeah, he was perverted. That's the spirit that I saw in him. Hence what happened to me. So I was like, well, gosh, thank God someone believes me. Someone knows, and this won't happen again. So I don't know what happened to him after that. So when I tell you guys, you have to learn to not be a prey. You have to learn to follow your intuition. You have to learn to nip things in the bud quickly. I mean that because you don't want to see someone rear their ugly head later on. So you may not physically see it like I did or visually see it as I did, but that spirit is still there and you don't want to get blindsided by it. You want to be able to see that spirit head on, and you want to be able to know what action to take. And the action that I should have taken is run the other way. I remember that incident so clearly because it reminds me to literally, when I see something, when I feel something, to act on it. And that situation could have been prevented if I properly acted on it, but I decided to brush it off. This was something serious. This is like, a lot of people do not even have the opportunity to see something head on. That was a clear sign. Most people ask for signs and wonders, and I literally had that, and I didn't do anything about it. But now I've taken the time to do something about it, and I'm dedicating my life, my time to be able to speak to you and hope that you do something about it before someone rears their ugly head, before they verbally mistreat you, before they, mistreat you, before they, and when I say mistreat, just, you can use the other word, the A word for it. But when people do these things to you, you don't want to be blindsided. You'll be able to know because you'll feel their spirit. You feel that something's not right. You'll feel that whatever it is, you don't need to be near it. And listen to the people around you, because a lot of times people, even if they're your friend, not let alone your enemy, if they're your friend telling you something, your family telling you something, take the time to consider, why would this person be helping me? Everyone's not jealous of you. Some people really don't want to see you get hurt. Some people really see something that you don't see. Take the time to, get your head out your butt and realize, hey, this person really could be helping me. Let me reevaluate some things. Everyone's not jealous of my relationship. Everyone doesn't want my man. If you're a guy, the same thing, because there are some women who are crazy and you're so blinded by the beauty that you don't realize that there's some craziness and there's some spirits under there, right? So, and that happens a lot. A lot of women are just, I talk about sometimes men manipulating, but women can be very deceitful, and a lot of women can recognize it. So if you have another woman tell you, you should listen. If you are a woman and another man tells you, definitely you should listen, because men recognize other men's games and their and women do the same. So that is it, other story time. I'm not going to be long-winded with this, which I feel like I already have been, and I'm sorry about that. But thanks for tuning in to Mrs. Danielle DeVita. Take care.
We live in a world where femininity, marriages, family, and courting is no longer valued. We live in hookup culture, situationships, and struggle love. The number one reason women struggle in long-term relationships: number one, femininity, and number two, staying in a relationship or entertaining people longer than the woman should.
My name is Danielle DeVita, and I'm a relationship and femininity coach. I've been married for 12 years, and I want to help you get on your feminine journey and vet for the right man today. For more of my content, you can visit MrsDanielleDeVita.com, or you can go to YouTube, Instagram, or my Facebook page. Get on your feminine journey today.